reason you're doing it.
Well, there are various steps along the way that are signs and indicators that you're getting somewhere, yeah. And
Wow.
again, that you can't be seduced. You can't be seduced by the, shall we say, side effects. Because once you become seduced by the side effects, and you think, oh, this is interesting, and you take a detour, and you think, no, I'll just go here because this is more interesting, then you get trapped into the ego clinging again. And that brings you back.
Okay.
That takes you further away from being released.
That makes sense, yeah.
I was going to say if that makes sense.
It does. And it does kind of make me see where he was coming from also, because it seems like you said, he was a casual observer who knew enough, like he had read enough about it to at least kind of understand the basics, but he wasn't a practitioner. So he kind of took that and applied it to characters within his universe.
Right, because I do think he did a lot of reading. Now here's the difference. A lot of people do a lot of reading, and you can understand a great deal by reading a lot of books on the subject, but there is nothing to compare to having to, first of all, practicing, daily practice, and the reason why it has to be daily practice is because the changes which occur in the mind are cumulative. You can't do it once a week. You can't do it once a month. You can't do it once every 6 months because it's something that has to build continuously. It's cumulative. Furthermore, you have to be guided by somebody who knows what they're doing, who can tell you if you're headed in the wrong direction or if you're going off into fantasy land. Because if you're going off into fantasy land, then that could become really detrimental, and you could actually, wind up in the loony bin. And a lot of people have, because they believe that they're actually getting somewhere, and in fact, they're just going off on the road of delusion. And that's obviously what a lot of people, in occultism and a lot of esoteric groups, they believe that they're getting somewhere, but they're not actually freeing themselves, but digging themselves into deeper quagmires of more thought, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the thing is also, I think when you're approaching something with this much spiritual history of being part of the universe, if you're not with someone who understands it completely, it would be very easy to get lost in it. And I think in a lot of ways people go down paths like this, and there's been many, many texts about people who've followed a deity or followed a religion, and it drove them mad because they couldn't really understand it.
Absolutely, and it's very easy to do because there have been a lot of people, especially creative people. A lot of creative people have a gift for mysticism. It's not unusual. It's very common. And it's a really tragic and sad thing because they have a gift for mysticism. And if they could only find somebody that they could trust to guide them gently into how to understand their mysticism and be freed by that great talent, it would be a wonderful thing, because the people have this horrible misconception that in order to be a mystic, it's somehow partial to being insane, like that you should be a lunatic to be a mystic. But that's a really bad road to go down. A lot of people think, too, to be creative, that you have to be somehow, that you can't be a creative person without being somehow addicted to something which fuels your creativity. The image of the glamorous drunken writer or, the drug-addicted musician. These are things that are absolutely not necessary. You can be a creative person and you can be a mystic and still be sober and still have mystical experiences, all from the manipulation of your mind through meditative practices, which stimulate and do the exact same thing that people were trying to experiment with in the 60s through drugs which enhance that kind of experience only temporarily, like
Right.
with LSD or psilocybin or things like this. Those are only temporary fixes that give you a gateway to understanding mystical experiences, but they cannot be permanent. They don't last.
Well, and I know a lot of people used the psilocybin tea, right? And they would, and not just in one religion, but many different religions kind of crossed over into that usage. I found out it was kind of interesting to read about, and a lot of people, like in the occult, were using that, and it was kind of dangerous because if you're kind of on a path that's not for self-righteousness or self-fulfillment, you're going to kind of go into a place that's pretty dark.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the problem is, if you're already going in that direction, maybe you're already a little mentally imbalanced in the first place, and you don't need much of a tip in that direction to go off the deep end. So you ought not to tamper with something if you're not, if you're not balanced in the first place. You don't need that, in other words. You don't need to go that route. So that's why people really need to be very careful about what they're doing. In the end, a lot of people in the West, simply because they have been totally stripped and castrated mentally, of the notion, of the awareness, of the understanding of the whole spirit world anymore. Frankly, since the Age of Enlightenment, we in the West just do not understand the whole rich mystical universe that exists. We have thrown that all away. We threw the baby out with the bathwater when we threw away religion, and when we left that to supposedly the fanatics, the religious fanatics. But there's got to be a middle ground now for people in the developed world. There's got to be some kind of a compromise to understanding that, yes, the whole mystical experience is a reality. You don't have to be frightened of it. You don't have to think that people will think you're crazy for experiencing it. You just have to experience it in a responsible way, taught by responsible people, not by, irresponsible drug addicts that are going to, lead you in a completely wrong direction. You have to go in a safe direction. And a safe direction doesn't necessarily mean an ascetic direction, but it means a direction that is going to show you the right way, not a damaging and disastrous way. You see, because in other parts of the world where magical religious lifestyle is still happening all the time, you don't have to explain these things to them. When I go to Nepal or India, it's a reality. You don't have to explain karma and cause and effect and uncontrollable recurring rebirths. You don't have to explain that if you do something that it may not the effect of what you do, of your actions, may not ripen tomorrow, but the effect of it may ripen in your next lifetime, because they're thinking about that. Some
Right.
of them anyway.
Right.
But in America, they're not thinking about that. They're just thinking about, what can I get today? What can how can I look out for number one right now, today? And they're not thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow. Because they all sense of spiritual awareness has been stripped from the industrialized world.
Well, and also I think the aftermath of the Crusades, we're kind of living that now, because a lot of things were thrown away, cast aside, hidden. They were told they could not be a part of these things, and so over generations, it seems like when they were forbidden to be a part of anything other than this one main religion, then the other religions kind of went back underground or were put back into secret societies. And especially in the Western world, here in America, we were taught, okay, anything other than this is evil. It's pagan. It's dark. It's wrong. I grew up, my mom was a Baptist school teacher, and even going through that, we were taught Buddhism was wrong, and it was a pagan thing, and it was
absolutely. That's because America is a completely dualistic society. It is a good versus evil society. And in a dualistic society, you can only, it's a very constricting way of thought. So, of course, the idea of Buddhism would be just as evil as Satanism, for that matter. It would just be anything that isn't in this paradigm of good versus evil would be considered beyond the pale. So that's completely understandable. Yeah.
Frustrating, though, for people who want to have an open mind and explore life. It's pretty frustrating to be told everything you think about, you better not go down that road, you're going to go to hell. I always wanted to live a little more open,
Yeah, but actually, that is even, even that interpretation of, I have to say, because I'm all for interfaith dialogues, and I work with I actually work with all denominations, but even that interpretation of Christ's teachings is a denigration of the original teachings of Christ, because that would not be recognizable to the original teachings of, his original disciples would not have that attitude either, because Christ was a mystic.
Right.
So, Jesus Christ was a rebel and a magician and a mystic himself. So when people have that kind of an attitude themselves, this is completely contrary to the understanding of Christ's teachings as they were originally understood. So even, and frankly, as a Setian, as practitioner, Set is misunderstood in the world of occultism because Set is more, Set being frequently misperceived as just another form or manifestation of Satan. This is completely misunderstood. Set has more to do with Jehovah, Jesus Christ, and Allah. Historically and biblically and archaeologically, he is more linked in all of the Hellenic prayers and magical papyri with Jesus and what we know today as God. So this is why when you tell me things like this about how, your upbringing in the Baptist community and things like this, I think to myself, of everything that I know about Set now today that I didn't even know at the beginning of my journey as a Setian, this also bothers me as well, because Baptists don't realize, too, that Set is really the father of all of these three Abrahamic religions. But that is a secret, which I will eventually write about, that Set is the father of all of those religions. He is like the father of those religions, which oversees he's the archon of this aeon.
Yep.
You heard it here first. Yeah.
Wow. And
but that's actually archaeologically true.
Wow.
And historically true. For example, there are many prayers to Set where his name is Eo. And Eo is another name, that's Typhon, Set, or Abraxas. Those are the names. Eo is the name interchangeably used for Typhon, Set, and Abraxas. And Abraxas, Eo is also known as the name for the father of Jesus. And Abraxas, the first four letters of Abraxas, are the same first four letters of Abraham. And that's interchangeable with also a word which was used in the ancient Gnostic magical spells, which we now know popularly, as comically even to this day, as abracadabra, because it's the first 4 letters.